A lot of business owners go into business, but they don't know the correct components when it comes to HR. You're advertising positions and you're bringing people on. And then you're training people. You're taking time away from people being productive. If you have high turnover, how much is it affecting the business productivity? Working with a client one time, he had said, "We have high turnover. We can't keep people more than 9 months." And he started rattling through. And by about 4 or 5, I just stopped him and I said, "Let me ask you something. Are you the problem? Never be the smartest person in the room. Always hire somebody smarter than you. So why wouldn't you want to bring in an expert when it comes to HR, when it comes to culture, when it comes to employee retention, when it comes to talent acquisition?"
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now let's get it started. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I am your host today, and we have in the studio TJ Butler. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, it's great to have you. It's great to have you. TJ owns a company called 45 Solutions. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about HR, leadership, and all kinds of cool stuff. Without further ado, let's get into it. So TJ, why did you start this company?
Well, I started the company because I realized I was kind of giving away a lot of the info for free. So I've been in HR for about 20 years, 10
Mm-hmm.
years in HR leadership. So I had neighbors, acquaintances, people that I knew locally. They would call me and they'd be like, "Hey, TJ, you're in HR. What am I doing?" And then insert some sort of employee relations situation or
Yeah.
how do they handle things? Because a lot of business owners go into business, but they don't know the correct components when it comes to HR. So I started just offering free advice because I believe a lot in servant leadership. And after about the third call, I was like, wait a minute, what if I started a business where I can actually help people? And so 45 Solutions was born. And basically the way that I view my company is I work with business owners. I partner with business owners to help them with support them with their HR needs.
Cool. Why do you say partner versus working for them or them coming to you? Why did you use that term in particular?
Sure. So I call myself a fractional HR expert. Okay.
Okay.
There's a lot of people out there, fractional CMO, fractional CFO. There's some that even do fractional chief people officer, CHRO. I want to be a little different, call myself a fractional HR expert because I want to be that HR expert for the business owner that can't really go out and afford to hire somebody full time, or they want to grow and scale, and they're not sure what they need. So I want to take that off of their plate so they can focus on working on other areas of their business. I'm not just an HR generalist, if you will. I mainly focus on the people side of HR.
So what you said is you started this company because a lot of people are asking you HR related questions and you felt like there was a business opportunity there. It sounds like you're doing, from an income perspective, I suspect they're doing more than asking you questions at this point. What does it look like? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah. So already the business has been around for a few years. The first year was a little rocky. It took me about 5, 6 months to get my first client.
Yeah.
And once I got one became two, which became four. It started exponentially creeping up. And I'm blessed to say that I have a full roster of clients. Now I still have bandwidth, but I have some really great clients that I work with currently. And
Yeah.
I'm always looking for more clients where I can help them to grow their business.
So, but how did you figure you could build a business out of just answering questions for folks? It's like one thing, it's like I meet people that say, "Hey, I'm a great cook," but it definitely doesn't mean that they should turn around and open up a restaurant, but
Agreed.
like, for all intents and purposes, that's what you did. What I heard you say is like you answer questions for people and you're like, okay, I'm going to turn this into a business.
Right. So what I did was I leveraged my experience of 20 years within HR
Yeah.
across multiple industries to be able to provide that HR service for business owners that they don't cover the areas that they don't know as it pertains to people, because the people that work for the business are one of the greatest assets.
Yeah.
So it's not just answering questions. There's a lot of stuff that I work on with clients. Whether it's the questions to ask during an interview process, actually performing interviews, how to build out a winning onboarding strategy, doing 30-60, how to do performance reviews and when, and does every performance review have to come with a salary increase? What should you look at in terms of salary increases? What do you do when an employee is not following the proper protocols within the organization? How do you do a corrective action? What if you made a bad hire and you need to get rid of somebody? I do all of those things for a number of different clients.
For sure, for sure. So you got a company, you say 10 people. Is that a good number, or does it need to be a bigger number?
It doesn't, no. So I work with companies that have anywhere from a few employees, up to 10, usually on an advisory level,
Okay.
where kind of those questions they know they need HR, but they're not sure where,
Yeah.
and they want to just get started, but they're not ready for anything else yet. Usually by the time an organization gets to around 10 employees, they know they need a bit more. Some companies are like, we need a handbook, we need to, put offer letters in place, we need procedures and processes.
Yeah.
But then I go all the way up to 99 employees for my clients.
You mentioned procedures and processes. I don't know. Just a gut. I mean, I worked with a company a long time ago, and I think they had about 6 employees, right? And they were just doing the thing. They got up, they did the work. They were working with a payroll provider, and they just did the thing that they did. They didn't. Now one of the problems that they ran into is they had a high turnover, with some of their staff, but they didn't know why. You know what I'm saying? So my question to you would be, like, going into a company like that, how do you help an owner understand the value that you're going to create for them, where they may not even realize they may not realize we'll call it the root of the problem. They
Okay.
see the results. They say, hey, I can't keep people. Hey, whatever, but they're not necessarily saying, hey, I need an HR process. I need a competitive, hiring strategy, et cetera.
And that's a great point. So one of the things that I've found over the years, and it's the statistic is actually valid, you could look it up. 75% of small business employees will leave an organization if they don't have HR in place.
Interesting.
People don't want to talk to the business owner because the business owner is focused on sales, marketing, operations, sometimes custodial. You name it, they're doing it. So HR is just a small slivery component. Somebody's like, do I really want to go talk to this guy about, I need to extend PTO because my sister's having a baby and she lives out in California. I want to take a week and a half as opposed to a week. Some people are afraid to ask those questions. So when they have when they have an HR expert in place, people are more apt to ask these type of questions, and it gives a buffer because if the business owner who's, like I said, thinking about 10 different things, he may not know the correct response to that question for that employee, but the HR expert will, and they can be that buffer. And they can be that buffer during the interview process. They could be that buffer for making offers or handling corrective actions or even terminations. So it comes down to risk management too.
Yeah, I can understand that. It seems like a lot to turn over, and I'm saying that from an experience perspective. It's just like suddenly somebody else is coming in to help with the interviews and create the job descriptions, et cetera, and margins, sometimes thin. You know what I mean? And what I'm thinking about is, like, how do you really ease into, being that value for that organization when they're at that almost that tipping point, where, like you said, their team is getting a little bit more complicated and they're having more complex conversations. Hey, I need some paid time off. How come we can't do this? And, et cetera, et cetera. Without that fear of, hey, this is going to cost me X number of dollars per month. How do I justify that? How do I, make that make sense for my books?
Well, how the easiest way to look at the justification is when you outsource or use a fractional, you're not paying a full-time salary. You're
Hmm.
not covering additional benefits. You're not worrying about somebody that you have additional costs. You have to provide an office for. You have to provide, different it's going to cost way more to bring somebody on full-time. And if it's not the right hire, it's not as easy to separate from let's say an HR director, should you bring that in. Whereas
Hmm.
if you go with like a fractional HR expert, somebody that can come in that has the experience, hit the ground running, knows exactly what you need, and can take care of it in a fraction of the time. And what may cost less than an entry level employee's annual salary, then it's almost like a win win. Then it's like, I can get all those things. I don't have to absorb higher salaries and additional benefits and anything else. And I get exactly what I'm looking for. So, from a business owner's perspective, it's actually a good thing to look at. And it'll help you if you're right, like you said, at that tipping point. You need HR within your organization, but you're not sure where to start.
Yeah.
And listen, I understand that there might be sometimes I may not be the best fit for everybody. Totally cool with that. I've got no problems in even referring out another fractional HR because I like to work with other people that want to grow and succeed and want to help others.
Love that. Love that. Love that. I think another way to ask that question, or a different question, related question, is, an HR person is a cost center. There's no real return on investment. There's no revenue generation from an HR perspective. And so as a business owner that's getting to that tipping point, how do I kind of ease into bringing you in a way that's going to, and I'm going to say in a way that's going to make me feel safe? Is, I get that, you're not going to cost as much as a firm, or bring in a full-time employee, but there still has to be a justification. There still has to be a return on investment on any money that we put out of the company.
And I couldn't agree more. But you're framing it differently. And this is how most business owners would look at it. So HR is not a revenue generating seat, if you will, not like sales is. You can kind of say marketing is, because marketing leads to more sales. But HR is just as important, because you're going to minimize turnover, number one. Think about all the money that you're spending when you're advertising new positions and you're bringing new people on, and then you're training people. You're taking time away from people actually being productive so they can train new employees. And if you have high turnover, how much is it affecting the business productivity
Yeah.
as in a whole? So when you look at it from that perspective, yes, HR might be a cost center and it's not a revenue generating seat, but it's one of the most important seats, if you will, to protect the business, because what's going to happen is you're going to have better employee retention and you're going to have better culture, which in turn is going to affect productivity.
I love that. I love that. So it's going to protect me. It's going to save money, and in the long run, builds a more stable culture. Talk to me about culture. Again, I'm a business owner. I've started my company. I brought in those first 10 people. The business is essentially an extension of myself, the way that I operate, the way I work, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to keep that culture with my expanding team, because, especially, those that are going to be client facing. I don't want my customers to say, hey, this is a different company than, it was 5 years ago when it was just you, or just you, a couple other people. How do you work with teams? How do you work with companies to really strengthen that culture, and just make it part of the daily operation?
That's a great question. So let's just call it, for the basis of this example, Rick's company. So Rick's company has 10 employees. You hired 10 people, one per month over the last 10 months. So you've got some people that have been here for 3 months, 6 months, so on and so forth. Some people just started. Where culture starts is at the top. It would start with you, Rick.
Okay.
Culture is not just bringing pizzas in, throwing them in the break room. Okay. Culture is empowering your employees, measuring productivity, correcting issues that may or may not be the right fit for what you want to do. You mentioned a customer saying, hey, it's not the same company. What were you doing when it was just you? And how do you reinforce that with the hires that you're making? How do you reinforce that during the interviews that you're having? Culture, you're measuring culture all the way before the interview process. And it's not saying, how do you fit into our culture in, candidate A? That's not it. There's series of questions that you can ask to see if it's a cultural fit, if somebody's going to be a good fit within the organization.
You got to tell me the secret there. I mean, that's that's a big one. How do you do that? How do you figure out if someone's going to fit into your culture? I mean, that's a big deal. You're fine. Just keep going.
Cool. We froze there. You said, yeah, all of a sudden, and just so you know, I'm getting a lot. Saying the internet's kind of choppy.
It'll keep recording, like to your local computer. So the internet, like if you just keep going, it'll, we can clean it. It's not going to be a lot to clean up.
Okay.
Did you get the question, or do I need to re-ask it?
Well, yeah, no, I didn't get the question at all.
Okay. So I mean, that's the secret sauce, being able to figure out if someone's going to fit into your culture in the interview process. How does one do that?
There's a series of questions that you can ask. It's how you ask questions. You're reading the body language. You're reading, can I envision this person within my company? And
Yeah.
some business owners say, hire fast, fire faster. I tend to agree, but only if you have the right onboarding plan in place, like a 30, 60, 90 plan.
Yeah.
Okay. During the first 30 days, you're measuring their KPIs as well as the deliverables. They're meeting with the manager on a regular cadence. Then they might be when they hit 60 days, you're re-reviewing things. You're adding more to the plate, maybe meeting with another manager. And then at 90 days, I like to, add something a little different. At the 90-day mark, I usually say that the business owner should be meeting with the new employee, because the business owner should believe that employee is part of the culture. Otherwise, if they're not part of the culture, do you want to put them in front of a client?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. So when you're talking about that interview process, you're talking about you interviewing that person, not the business owner. Is that am I getting that right?
Sometimes I've done interviews for clients. I've participated in conjunction. That's why when we first started, you had mentioned, why did you choose partner? That's why I'm a partner. As a fractional HR expert, I might do the interview, I might sit in on the interview, or I might guide the business owner on certain things that he might want to say if that business owner chooses to handle the interviews on their own, or if somebody else within their team handling the interviews.
How do you fit into the culture? I mean, you're fractional. You're coming in periodically. You're interacting. You're building trust with the team. They're picking up the phone. They're calling. They're like, TJ, blah 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 happened. How do you what are the steps that you take to build that trust?
Well, first and foremost, I keep it really simple. All of my clients know, and the business owners know. At the end of the day, the most important thing is we're taking care of the customers, the clients, patients, whatever you want to call them, and that the team's getting along. All the other stuff is minutia. I just focus on what I can control. I don't get involved in office politics. I don't get involved in any of that. What I do is I just put my best foot forward and I try to be relatable and I try to be there for people. I meet people where they are so I can help them grow. I've never gone into an organization, nor will I, where I'm going to replace somebody, like let's say a full time employee. I don't believe in that. If anything, I'm going to help any employees that you may have, but I don't
Hmm.
believe in replacing somebody as a fractional.
Yeah. I can understand it. I can understand. It seems tricky. With coming in, I've gone into organizations, as a, you know, whatever consultant or whatever, and it was like a very intentional effort, to get involved with the team. It's just like, we're going out to lunch or whatever, we're having the conversations, and they're saying, "Oh wow, Rick is a cool guy." We're lowering those barriers. Hey, let's have those conversations, et cetera. I mean, is that kind of your experience, or are you?
Yeah. So I like to meet, like I said, I like to meet people where they are, whether it's lunch, we're meeting for coffee, whatever.
Hmm.
If I'm going, if an organization, now there's some companies that are 100% remote that I work with. Okay.
Yeah,
So a lot of it is done over situations like this, over Zoom calls or video calls, phone calls, if you will. But if they've got a, individual location or locations, I like to get out there on occasion, especially when there's no reason for me to be there because that's the key.
yeah,
Because when people see you come in, and if they know you as it's the HR, that's the HR expert that our company hired. He's here to write up somebody or do a corrective action or terminate somebody.
yeah,
People start freaking out when you come in. People's blood pressure. Oh,
yeah,
you don't.
yeah,
Nobody wants that. I
yeah.
don't want that.
Right? That's a toxic environment we're trying to get away from, right?
Exactly. And I'm open and honest with people about that. I'm like, I'm here for you. I'm here to help you.
I love that approach. I'm here to help you, and that goes across the organization. One thing you said earlier is you talked about culture, and you were saying it comes from a top-down perspective. And we also talked about the idea or the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs are just really, really driven. They're focused on growing their organization, or they're focused on staying in business. Frankly, you
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? And I'll tell you, my company's got relatively large. I think we had about 25, 30 employees or something like that, and I wasn't the right person, to build the culture, for the organization. There were other people, there were other managers that could step in, or that really helped and led that and built trust and that sort of thing. And it allowed me to really be focused and driven, and that person that I am. I mean, is that a bad strategy, or is that an inappropriate strategy? I mean, it wasn't, and I want to be clear that, it wasn't that I was invisible. It wasn't that, people couldn't come to me or whatever, but I just felt like there were other people that were better at it. So what are your thoughts on that?
So
Was
I
that
think that
terrible? Should I
that
fire myself?
no, no, if you think about it, let me frame it to you this way. As the business owner, if the business owner is the only person that's bringing in sales, but he has a sales team, is it the business owner's problem or is it the salespeople's problem? Okay,
That's the question. Yeah.
that's a good
Should have hired
question.
better.
So exactly. So that's where you get to start thinking about things. So it's all in how it rolls. It's all in how it works out and it rolls out. I think it's okay for a business owner to step aside as long as he will vocally at back the fractional HR expert that's trying to bring that culture in. If he says, "Hey guys, we're using 45 solutions as our HR, and I think these guys are going to be great. they've got great things going on. I really want you guys to make sure you give them their time that they need. And then that's it. If you needed to step away, that gives you the opportunity to focus on other areas.
Yeah.
Like for example, I'm a business owner. I'm not good at finance. I outsource my finances. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think when a business owner understands that they can play to their strengths, but if they can replace it and hire somebody even better, I believe Steve Jobs used to say that the goal is to always hire somebody, never be the smartest person in the room, always hire somebody smarter than you.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you want to bring in an expert when it comes to HR, when it comes to culture, when it comes to employee retention, when it comes to talent acquisition, HR compliance, if you will? Those things, if you can get somebody in there that can take that off of your plate and you could focus on something else, but as long as you're still backing them. And the reason I said it starts from the top down is because when the business owner believes in it, the rest of the team will believe in it. But if the business owner isn't aligned, he's just saying, hey, we need HR just to get in here. From a risk management perspective, we need to have compliance. Some industries require compliance. So sometimes it's not always the right fit. But what I found in the time that I've owned my business is that business owners that want to grow and want to scale their organizations, they get it. They understand it.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You had talked earlier about the scenario where the CEO was the best salesperson, but had a sales team.
Mm-hmm.
You ever had to go into an organization and create basically a job description for that CEO, for that person, so that they would have some sort of framework that talked about what they would and wouldn't do?
From a CEO perspective
Perspective, yeah.
I wouldn't say that I've ever had to go in and say, hey, Mr. Business Owner, I'm going to replace you. But what I have done is I've worked with organizations where the CEO has everybody reporting to him or her, just to kind of keep it vague and ambiguous, because I don't want to disclose any of my clients. But I went in and I helped him bring in a leadership team. Now, we always try to promote from within so that there was levels to where he could step away. See, so as a business owner, we often tend to say, we're the only people that can do task X.
Yeah.
Nobody can do it better than us. Nobody can talk about 45 solutions better than TJ. That's not true. There's somebody out there. They may be good, but it all depends upon the timing. In the situation I was just telling you about, the business, they had over 45 employees a very flat organization, but they all reported into the business owner. So what we needed to do was we needed to diversify. We needed a director of finance, director of sales, director of operations, and a director of production. We put those in place, and then he talked to those 4 people, and those 4 people talked to the rest of the staff, and they helped expedite productivity.
Yeah. I find that critical, absolutely critical.
Does that kind of answer your question regarding building out job descriptions and things like that?
Well, we touched on the idea that we have to, or there are situations where we frame out the CEO broke into, you went a different direction, which was great, in terms of building out that leadership team. I hadn't thought of that. So thank you for that. My question though, because one of the things that you said is that we try to hire from within. And one of the things that I've seen, one of the terrors that I'm sure folks can relate to, is the idea of promoting from within and that person moving to a manager position, not being a manager. They're really good technical person or they're really good salesperson, but they're not necessarily a good leader. How do you mitigate that? What's the approach?
So, and I love the fact that you brought up technical and sales, because those 2 areas are often where a business owner says, that's our best tech guy. Let's make him a manager. That person may not have any managerial experience whatsoever. In sales, I often look at it as, why would you take your best salesperson out of the sales funnel and have them manage other people? They can mentor new people, and that's where you evaluate. See, if you're going to build a management structure and build from within, I often look at it where you want to build what's called it's a personnel development matrix. So essentially, you have the list of job responsibilities for each position within a certain business line. Okay. Let's say, for example, I'll just use the manufacturing company, operations associate. Then they have senior operations associate, operations lead, then operations manager, director, VP, so on and so forth. When you build that out, because there may be positions within your manufacturing company at Rick's Company LLC, there's positions that haven't been formed yet. But if you want to help that person maybe become a manager, they need to not only be able to do their position, but the position that they're going into. And also they need to be able to coach a junior person to replace them. And if somebody can't do that, they have no business being a manager.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, it's just the facts. That's when you know you might have to go outside. And when you go out from on the exterior, that's how you start to evaluate how long has somebody been a manager for. And it's not sometimes it's the metrics that you're looking at, but it's how many people did you coach up out of your organization to replace you? And how many people went above you? That's how I would be hiring an exterior manager,
Mm,
regardless.
that makes sense. And of course,
I'm
we're
giving
going
I'm
back.
giving away all the trade secrets for free.
You know what you're doing is you're helping us understand better what we don't know.
Yeah. And listen, and I get it. I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah, HR is a monster. I mean, it's when you get into the compliance pieces of this, when you get into those cultural issues. We had a situation once where there was a communication issue, and it was like two different personality types essentially, and they're agreeing, but they don't really realize they're agreeing. We had to go back and we did some personality tests and help each other, help them understand each other, which was a good move. But I mean, you get into larger organizations, that conversation becomes more complex. You
Hmm.
get up to your 99 employees and it's just like, suddenly you've got soup and you're just like, oh my gosh, I need to make sure this machine is still running because we want to continue to operate. We want to continue to be excellent in what we do. So Mike, a question that I have is, we look at growth in an organization, we're going from 10 employees to 20 employees, 25, 30 employees. I'm a strategist, just by nature. How do you build an HR strategy to make sure that as you're going from 10 to 20 to 25 to 30 people, that your organization still maintains the level of excellence that it started with, maintains the culture, and doesn't become imbalanced? I've got too many managers, I've got too much talent, not our sales team is strong, but our product team is not as strong. How do we make sure that we're moving in the right direction safely?
So that's a great point. What you want to make sure is that the plan for growth is interwoven throughout every level that you just mentioned. We don't hire too many managers. We don't hire too many people that can't where we're going to overwhelm a manager. We don't hire too many salespeople and then not have enough product. Okay. So HR will work with the rest of the leadership teams. Theoretically, what I do is I sit on the leadership team with the business owner and the other leaders of the company to help them and guide them as to what the human component of an organization can provide for them. So if we're talking about, let's say the director or the VP of ops wants to separate ops and production. He's overseeing both and he wants to separate two. And he's not sure who to promote within that org matrix.
Yeah.
You can assist him, you can guide him, and you can say, maybe there's somebody that we might want to look at. Has this person ever mentored anybody? Have they ever coached anybody up? What responsibilities do they have that would make you think they would be a good manager? And sometimes you might say, let's bring in an outside coach to coach people up because we want to only promote from within. We don't ever want to go outside. That's a cultural mindset. Some people say, we're going to get the best people, but then to lead them, we're always going outside. Okay. Again, that's a cultural mindset. It depends. And that starts at the top and works its way down. So it's got to be really interwoven in there. And you got to make sure that you're doing it right. Because I think the best problem that an organization can have is they're growing too fast. That means you've got a good product, you got a good, you got symmetry. But what's going to happen is if you continue to grow too fast, you're going to burn people out. So you got to take care of them. You got to provide the resources that they need so that they can grow. They can grow their careers.
Well, what would you recommend to an owner of a fast growing organization to ensure that communication is open so that when people are starting to get to that point where it's just like, hey, I'm working, not thinking about it, but hey, I'm working 60 hours a week and I'm starting to get burned out and I need to, hang out at my kid's baseball game, et cetera, et cetera. How do you coach owners around that?
Sure. So first and foremost, I would say that you want to make sure that your leaders are at least doing, if they oversee a group of individuals, and I'm trying to keep it very vague and generic, but if they maybe oversee a group of individuals as a manager or as a lead, they're trying to do one-to-ones on a weekly basis,
Mm,
whether it's over coffee, lunch, midday snack, whatever. And it's very informal. How are you? What are we doing to help you grow? What do we need to do to help you grow? What are some areas where you feel like you're just not getting it? And what are some areas where you think, you really excel? and you ask open-ended questions like that, and number one, has the employee will lower their guard because they get to talk about themselves, and everybody loves to talk about themselves. Okay, so they're saying this is what I'm great at, and this is where I'm doing this. But you didn't answer the other question: what areas do you need help? What areas are you struggling with? And then they might say, well, you know what? I'm working 60 hours a week. Well, let's look at your time management skills. I can't go to my kid's baseball game. Well, because you're working 60 hours a week. If we were to bring in something like a time management perspective or a time management expert to help you with that, or if we implement strategy X to help you, would that maybe help get you to more of those baseball games? Yeah, probably. People might be more apt to do so. You meet people where they are. At the end of the day, you mentioned it, when an organization gets bigger, a lot of corporate speak comes in. Okay. But at the end of the day, we're people. Operations is very black and white, but HR is the gray area because it's all about the people.
I like that. I like that. That was cool.
Thanks. And you know what? I just came up with it on the fly.
All right, all right. You have to write that one down. That is going to be a clip. I promise you that. You talked about servant leadership earlier. What is servant leadership, and how does it differ from other styles of leadership?
Sure. So I can only speak on my behalf. When I started my company, and look, I actually have an employee handbook. Okay. So, I figure practice what you preach, number one. But number two, being believing in servant leadership means I'm going to go out and help people as much as I can. So,
Hmm.
for example, when I'm doing, let's say, business development, somebody introduces me to somebody, or, hey, you should really connect with so and so. And I can't really work with that individual. There's nothing for us to do. What I can do is I can be a connector and help that individual.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can say, you know what? How can I help you? And that's usually what I lead off with, unless our companies are, let's say, HR adjacent, if you will. The other way that I believe in servant leadership is, can I give my time freely and expect nothing in return? So I'm part of the local Rotary. I'm on a couple of different committees there. I serve on a couple of nonprofit boards currently, and I want nothing in return. I don't want the gold stars for it. To me, that doesn't mean anything. I just want to help people. Like, most of the nonprofits that I work with are either children based or startup based. If there's a way I can give back to somebody, especially people that are just kind of getting started off, I'm happy to.
Nice, very nice, very nice. How does it show up in your work, in your fractional work? How does servant leadership show up there?
So I would say the number one area where servant leadership really shows up first and foremost is, I'll have a business owner that says, hey, we've got this situation. And I tackle it head on. I'm like, tell me what the situation is and let me take care of it so you don't have to worry about it. That, I think, is the best way to exemplify what I mean as a servant leader. I'm going to take care of the problem so you don't have to. That's why I call myself a fractional HR expert. I'm not the chief human resource officer. I'm not the chief people officer. None of that. I'm the HR expert that's going to handle the problem so you don't have to worry about it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It does. It does. What are the, I guess, what are the areas in the company that you make the most significant, like when you're working with a company, where do you make the most significant impact, you as an individual?
Wow. So typically, I would say it always starts usually with, once the business owner or business leaders agree that that's a fit, because that's the other thing too. Just because somebody wants fractional HR, I need to be a fit with them. So that's number one. Once we determine it's a fit, usually where we see the biggest impact is once we start putting different policies and procedures in place. Some of the people that might have been there for a while, there might be some grumbles, but some people might say, this is good. We needed more of this. Well, you know what? We now have a voice to talk to, and it's not like my manager. I'm not going to get, retribution or retaliation because I brought up an idea that they thought was stupid. Because I may not know everything about the business, but I'll listen to people, meet them where they are, and I'll understand that they have an idea, not only improve the company, but they want to add value. And when I explain that to the leadership, they're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should listen a little bit more. Just because you always did it a certain way doesn't mean it's always the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. You end up, it sounds like you end up being a middleman sometimes in some of these conversations, some of these difficult conversations. How do you handle that from your own perspective, internalizing other people's issues essentially, but also working with the leadership or working even between the leadership and the individual to get these problems resolved?
So that's the number one way that I think I can bring value from my servant leadership perspective, it doesn't bother me when I have to do a termination. 9 times out of 10, that person probably terminated themselves long ago. You
Mhm.
probably have corrective actions and so on and so forth. I've done layoffs. I understand that it hurts. I've done corrective actions where people have gotten really upset. I've been cursed at, hey, look, I'm HR. We don't get invited to happy hour for this specific reason. Nobody wants to see us there. They're like, oh, great. HR's here. We can't have fun. But it's good because it's plausible deniability. We don't know what goes on, right?
Mhm.
But that's how I'm able to sleep at night, because for me, I know that when I put my head on the pillow, I helped a business owner, or I helped the people that work for the business owner, or the people that may soon work for the business owner. So it's that level of service that I'm giving back. That's how I'm able to compartmentalize it and move on with my day.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how do you work through those different difficult situations between an employee, a disgruntled employee, and a CEO, where the disgruntled employee may not be wrong? How do you what do you do?
So that's a great point. And how I'll handle that is, I was working with a client one time, and in the beginning of the process, he had said, we have high turnover. Okay. We can't keep people more than 9 months. This so and so worked 6, so and so worked 9. And he started rattling through. And by about 4 or 5, I just stopped him and I said, let me ask you something. Are you the problem? And he was like, what? I said, well, think about it. Are you the problem? Do you have too many people reporting to you? Do you have, are you, pulled in so many different directions that you can't focus on one particular area? And so it's okay for a CEO to sometimes be wrong. Now, you don't call them on the carpet in front of the employees, but in a private room, I've got no problem saying that, because at the end of the day, you brought me in to fix the problems that you're having, and to give you guidance so that this way you can grow and scale, keep the right people, manage out the ones you don't want, have a good culture, and ultimately grow the business.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's great. That's fantastic. Do you ever see? You had mentioned one of the things you talked about was terminating people and people kind of terminating themselves. Essentially, do you? I saw an organization where they basically set up metrics,
Mhm.
and employees could opt out by not hitting their metrics. And I'm not just talking about like performance related, but I'm talking culture. It could have been like 5 or 10 different factors that were taken into consideration. Is that a method that you've seen, that you use, that you recommend, or do you have perhaps do you recommend a different approach?
So I think we're at this inflection point from a business perspective in the post-COVID world. Some businesses wanted the return to office. It was very important for some businesses. Some businesses learned that they could thrive in a remote environment. They found employees to be more productive. Where I think if it works for the business, using metrics, you need to be flexible, because again, just because it worked at a certain time doesn't mean it's going to work today. Now, you mentioned something, and a red flag immediately went up. An employee wants to opt out of performance metrics. An employee wants to opt out of culture metrics. That employee, it might be the right person. They may be the wrong seat, if that makes sense. But if they're the wrong person for any of the seats, they're not the right fit for your organization. And it's okay to let them go, because you're going to do a disservice to yourself and everybody that works for you
Yeah.
by keeping them on.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic. We're just about out of time. What do you want to leave our audience with? What's the most important thing you want them to remember this interview by?
So I would say, if anything, CEO can be wrong, but don't ever tell him he's wrong in front of your employees.
So if someone wants to work with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Sure. So my website is solutions.net. Felt like there was too many .coms. I wanted to be a little different. The same way I'm a little different with the fractional HR expert. So
Love
it's
it.
40, the number 4, the number 5, solutions with an S, net. And anybody that's interested, get a free HR audit. I can take a look at what you currently have, and I can tell you what you might need versus what you might want.
Fantastic. TJ, thank you so much. This has been a great interview. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.